Hey everyone, welcome back to Therapist Uncorked. I'm your host, Carly, a therapist who has way too many thoughts and not nearly enough time. As always, anything discussed in this podcast is not formal therapy. We're strictly here for informational and entertainment purposes only. If you are struggling with your mental health, I encourage you to contact a local mental health provider, your local emergency services, or you can even text or call the 988 helpline for immediate crisis assistance. In today's episode, we'll be talking about anger. Everyone experiences anger at some point. It's totally normal, very valid emotion. So why do we all view it as a bad thing? Let's explore what our anger is actually trying to tell us. Societally and just in general, I feel like we all usually view anger as this, it's this bad thing. It's something we should avoid. And there's so much fucking stigma around anger, right? If we're feeling angry, it's okay. How do I get over this? How do I push this down? How do I stop being so angry? It's something that we all try to pretend is not there. And if it is there, we try to get rid of it as soon as possible. And I totally get it. I do it too sometimes too, because it's such an uncomfortable feeling, right? It doesn't feel good and it feels like we're not supposed to have it. But really, do we say that about feeling happy, about feeling excited, anything like that? No, right? We celebrate that. We're excited about excitement. And I can understand why anger doesn't feel good, right? And I can understand why we look at it as a bad thing, but it's a feeling. And so is happiness, and so is excitement. Those are all feelings. So why does anger have so much stigma around it? Why is it something that we look at as though it should be avoided? So I feel like that's how we kind of societally look at anger. But what anger actually is it's not a bad thing. It's trying to tell us something. It's information, and we should use it as such. And I know that sounds kind of silly, right? Like, okay, a feeling is information. Like, it sounds weird, and I get it. When I was first learning in grad school and even in my current practice more about anger and what it actually is, it was really interesting to me, and it kind of blew my mind, because I'm always someone who I avoid confrontation because I don't want it to turn into yelling or being angry or being upset with each other. I avoid confrontation. Whenever I'm feeling angry, I try to kind of push it down and shove it aside, because listen, I'm a human and anger doesn't feel good. But as I started learning more about what anger actually is, it was really eye-opening for me. And if we look at anger more as our body, really, it's our body and our brain's way of trying to communicate something to us, which I know sounds kind of silly, but it's this part of us. It's not all of us, even though it can definitely feel all-consuming. It's just a part of us. Anger is a part of us that comes out sometimes. And if we look at it as though our body and our brain are trying to tell us something, it can actually be really, really cool and interesting. So let's use that anger, or really any feeling, but obviously today we'll kind of hone in on anger. But if we use that anger as information and be really curious, like, what is it trying to tell me? What is it trying to communicate? Because as cheesy as and therapist-y as this is, all behavior is communication. So this angry part of us that's coming out, what is it trying to communicate? It's having this behavior, whether our body is feeling maybe a little sweaty or shaky or tense, or we're struggling to focus, whatever it is. When we're feeling angry, our body sometimes even knows before our brain knows what we're feeling, right? When I'm feeling anxious, my stomach falls into my ass. And sometimes it's before my brain can even kind of register, holy crap, you're feeling anxious. My body is already feeling it. Or when I'm feeling really excited or nervous or angry, whatever it is, my body gives me signals, which is also something that I think is kind of amazing, that our body is holding on to all of these things. Our nervous system is holding on to all of these things. And sometimes it will show us, kind of give us clues before our brain even registers what's going on. And that's especially apparent with anger. And I work with many clients, young, old, female, male, whatever it is, tons of different people with tons of different symptoms that are coming in saying, hey, I just have a lot of anger issues. And again, anger feels like shit. It doesn't feel good. So a lot of the work that I do with clients that are experiencing anger is we like to get really curious with it. And I remember when I was in orientation with my current supervisor at my current practice, and we were kind of talking about, what populations or kind of disorders, symptoms, whatever, do you like to work with? And I jokingly said, I really like angry men. And she started laughing at me and she's like, oh my God, me too. But it sounds silly, right? Like I love angry men because it doesn't sound great. But I love working with angry men, or just really, people dealing with anger in general, because it's such a misunderstood emotion. And so many people, like I said, look at it as a bad thing or something that we need to avoid, something we need to push down. But using it can actually be really empowering. And I'm not saying using it to be like manipulative or violent, nothing like that, but using it to inform our thought process, using it to inform our actions can be really empowering. And I found a lot of, there's been a lot of really cool times that I've, sat in my office with clients and we've gotten really curious with that anger. And it's been a way for them to understand themselves and their brain and their body way more, which is really cool. And that's one of the coolest parts of this job, is to be able to kind of help people look at things from a different frame, from a different lens, to understand the inner workings of their brains. And it's really interesting. And a lot of times when I'll kind of have this conversation with clients about like, hey, anger is information, exactly like I'm talking about right now, at first they're like, what the fuck? Because it sounds really weird. It does. But I don't know, it's kind of cool. And it's very different than how we as a general society look at things. So like I said, if we're kind of looking at it as though it's trying to tell us something, it's trying to give us information, let's be really curious. So when I'm first working with clients that are experiencing a lot of anger, I introduce the concept of an anger iceberg. So some people might have heard of this before, but essentially let's picture an iceberg, okay? So there's, the little tip of the iceberg that's sticking out of the water, and that's what you see. And then there's the rest of the iceberg, which is usually a majority of it, that's underwater that we don't see, so we kind of forget that it's there. So if we're picturing anger as that little part of the iceberg that's sticking out of the water, that's what's showing up, that's what's in your face, that's what's, in the forefront of your mind, you kind of think that's all there is, right? Because when we're feeling angry, we're like, okay, no, I'm just fucking mad, which valid. Like sometimes we're just mad, okay? Like that's all right, okay? But if we look at, kind of the anger iceberg, okay, what's under all the anger? Because ultimately anger is a secondary emotion. We feel something else first, even if we don't consciously recognize it or understand it or are able to kind of put a name on it, put our finger on what it is, it's still there. So for instance, let's say I'm getting really frustrated with, let's say my husband, I don't know. I think about him all the time. So he's just here. If he's listening, hi, I love you. You're my favorite. I hope he's listening. I don't know. We'll see. Stay tuned. But so let's say I'm getting, really mad at my husband about something, right? And I'm just feeling fucking pissed because you're pissing me off. Okay, well, what's under that though? Am I mad at you? Let's say I'm mad at him for, I don't know, not unloading the dishwasher if I asked him to, right? Silly example, but that's something that I do get really frustrated about sometimes, right? Okay, well, what's under that frustration? That's anger, that I'm experiencing. It's probably not actually about the dishwasher. And sometimes it totally is. Maybe it's about that what's coming out as anger might actually be me not feeling heard or not feeling valued or whatever it is, and I'm not saying that's the case for everyone. And sometimes, like I said, it really just is you not unloading the dishwasher is annoying, and I do the same thing. I'm a huge hypocrite. Therapists are the biggest hypocrites you'll ever meet. But what I'm getting at is, again, that anger iceberg. Anger is what comes out. It's what you're seeing. But there's usually so much more underneath it. So being really curious and just kind of having the courage to explore that anger is really important, because it not only helps us, kind of in the moment recognize, okay, what is actually happening for me inside and how's it coming out? But then also it can kind of teach our brain, not only in the moment, but just in general, to have this pattern of just really taking a minute and like checking in with ourselves to see what's really going on, because usually the root of the problem is not the anger. That's just what's coming out. So again, anger is a secondary emotion, and anger is a very valid emotion. Just to be clear, it is a feeling, it is an emotion, and it's important. And we need to give that angry part of us that's coming up, we need to give it attention. Because really, if this angry part of us is coming out. It's begging for attention. It's screaming for attention. So what the fuck does it need attention for? And I mean that not as a rhetorical question. I mean it as an actual question. What does this anger need? What's it trying to communicate to me? So kind of giving into that attention-seeking part of your anger, if you will, can be really helpful to understand yourself, to understand what's going on internally. And then again, paying attention to what your body is telling you too, because very often your body is telling you, hey, I'm feeling really angry or whatever it is. And it can be doing that before you're cognitively noticing that emotion. It can be telling you during when you're feeling that emotion. Your body can be telling you something too, and it can even tell you after. I notice if I'm getting in an argument or I'm having some sort of confrontation, I notice my face gets all red, I get sweaty, I start to feel my heart pounding, and that's happening, before the confrontation. If I know it's, kind of coming, we've all gotten that, hey, we need to talk, right? We've all gotten that, and I don't know about you, but when that happens to me, I am freaking out a little bit. So I'm noticing that sweatiness, that, heart racing, whatever it is. I also notice that during the confrontation, the conflict, whatever it is. And then sometimes after, if I feel like the issue hasn't been solved, whatever we were arguing about hasn't been solved, I might still feel those same things in my body. Or if I feel like there has been a resolution to whatever we were arguing about, maybe my body starts to kind of calm down a little bit more. I start to notice my breath calm down a little bit, because I also start to hold my breath when I get anxious or angry. So maybe I notice, okay, I can actually breathe a little better now. I'm not as sweaty. My face is kind of not beet fucking red, right? Like I'm able to notice the changes in my body. So not only using our body cues, if you will, as clues to kind of inform our decisions and what's going on, but using our anger to also inform our behavior, to inform our communication is kind of amazing. And it's this really cool thing. And I'll talk about this in future episodes, but in therapy, we look at things through both kind of the cognitive lens, so like what's going on in our thinking, logical side of our brain, but then also through a somatic lens. And somatic is kind of like body-based, like paying attention to your body, what's going on in your body, right? So it sounds kind of silly, and when I first started learning about that in grad school, and again at my practice here, I didn't quite understand the connection between the brain and the body, because I'm like, what do you mean? Like, this feeling makes me sweaty. What do you mean? Sometimes I get a racing heart before I notice I'm anxious. Like, it sounds weird, but I mean, if you think about it, our brain and our body are connected. Our body's holding on to all of this shit for us. Everything we've ever experienced, our body is holding on to it, because that's the whole point of our body, is to protect us, is to hold on to things to make sure we're okay. And we're able to use our experiences, good, bad, ugly, whatever it is, to, kind of create who we are, form an identity. And it's kind of amazing to use these things that are happening in our body and our brain as clues to help us be the best version of ourselves. So something I often say to a lot of my clients, whether it's about anger or sadness, whatever it is, any feeling, we can't control our feelings or emotions, but we can control what we do with them. So of course, there's a lot of nuance to that, because sometimes when we're kind of feeling super angry or super anxious, we're not being the most logical, because when we're dysregulated, when we're feeling big emotions, we're not in that logical side of our brain, right? That side of our brain, I mean, research literally shows like that side of our brain just like, it kind of goes on vacation for a little bit. So again, lots of nuance to this thought of we can't control our feelings, but we can control what we do with them. There's a lot of nuance to that. But essentially kind of the premise of what I'm getting at is like, hey, every emotion is so valid. And I know that's like the most annoying therapist thing to say, but it's true. Every emotion's valid. We cannot control what emotions pop into our head. We cannot control when emotions come. We can't control what they are, how they feel, how long they last. None of that. Like, feelings are feelings, and they're there. However, we can control how curious we are about them, how we decide to use that information about our feelings to inform our communication, our decisions, our behaviors, all of that. So essentially, like, long story short, what I'm trying to get at, I say long story short as I've been yapping for 15 minutes. which is pretty on brand for me, let's be real. Like, I will tell a 2-minute story and it ends up being like 15 fucking minutes because we took 8 detours. But you know what I will say? No one will ever find me boring, okay? Like, I might be annoying sometimes and I might be a little extra, actually very extra, but I'm not boring, okay? I mean, sometimes I talk about pretty boring stuff, I guess. I don't know. Whatever, I digress. But using all of these things, all of our feelings, all of our body sensations, all of that as information is kind of amazing. And I think it really is this superpower that a lot of people use. And it's something that I don't think people talk about enough. Although I have noticed kind of an uptick in people talking about like those body sensations, those somatic sensations as a way to really understand ourselves more. And I love that we're all talking about that more because I think it's something that should be talked about more. We should be taught about this. We should understand kind of the connection between the brain and the body and how we can use our feelings to our benefit, you know, and sometimes really like anger is just anger. There's not much we can do about it sometimes, and it's just there. And you know, of course, we like to be in control because that's how we are as humans, but that's not always how it works. So kind of giving ourselves grace too, I think is really important because, you know, we try our best. We try to be logical. We try to be, you know, in control of everything, but that's just not how it works. Sometimes we kind of crash out, you know. Also, okay, I was talking to someone yesterday about like all the terms that the kids use, like the term crash out. And I usually listen, I'm only 29. Like, I'm not old, but I feel like I'm not in the know with a lot of these terms that the younger kids use. And I do see a lot of like adolescents and teenagers in my practice that I work at. So they like to teach me how old I am by teaching me about terms that they use these days. So crash out is one that I actually really like. It's basically just like losing your shit, sort of. I think that's my understanding of it, at least. And then another one that they use is lock in. Like, oh, I'm locked in. That means like I'm super focused, or like, okay, I'm going to make sure I get this done. At least that's, again, my understanding. So I like to use those terms. So if you ever hear me using them, that's what they mean. And I might be totally fucking wrong. So if I'm wrong, correct me. But I like to think I'm cool and hip. I'm not quite 30, so I think that still means I'm young. I don't know. I mean, I wear mom jeans and like I go to bed at 9 p.m., so I don't really know if I'm cool and young, but listen, I try, okay? I really try. And I also love when I talk to my like adolescent or teenage clients and use these terms and they're like, what the fuck? Like, they probably think it's so weird, but whatever, at least I'm trying, okay? But anyway, getting back to when I said crashing out initially, you know, sometimes when we're crashing out, we're losing our shit, we're not logical, we're not thinking, you know, and that's okay. Like, I think it's important to give ourselves grace here too, because we're not always going to be the most regulated version of ourselves. We're not always going to be, you know, this forward thinking and, you know, whatever you want to call it. We're not always going to be this like amazing, perfect version of ourselves, but that's called being human. First of all, like, it's not that fucking serious. It's just learning from those experiences when we are crashing out, when we are, you know, not noticing our feelings in the way that would be most helpful. Like, that's okay. Just notice it. Use that experience or those experiences to make yourself a better version of you, you know? So again, kind of circling back to just the overall premise of this episode is anger, or any feeling really, is information. It's not a problem. So the problem is not anger. The problem is not understanding it, right? And maybe problem isn't the right word. I don't know, semantics, but which is funny because language is so important, but then sometimes I'm like, I can't think of the right word. But anyway, anger is information. Any feeling is information. No feelings are bad. Let's look at them as helpful or not helpful. Or let's even look at not even the feeling itself as helpful or not helpful. Let's look at kind of the aftermath, if you will, of the feeling as helpful or not helpful. Use it to inform decisions. Use it to inform your behavior, your communication, how you show up for yourself, for others, at work, at home, whatever it is. And just be curious. I know I said that a million times, but I think it's so important to really just stop making assumptions about yourself, about others, and just try to fucking understand, right? So sometimes it is helpful for some people too to kind of externalize it too. So what I mean is, like, if I'm feeling really angry, okay, I am not angry. That's the angry part of me that's coming out. Like, okay, that's the anger talking. And that doesn't really make sense for everyone. It makes sense for some people, whatever. But sometimes I think kind of taking away the kind of taking away the pressure of like, oh my God, I'm an angry person. No, there's an angry part of me that's really needing some attention, you know? And again, that's not to say like, okay, this angry part of you can then do whatever the fuck it wants and I just have an excuse because I'm not angry, it's the angry part. No, okay, listen, like there's a difference between having grace and understanding and holding ourselves accountable. And both of those things need to happen, right? Like we are ultimately in control of ourselves. So we can understand, we can have grace for ourselves, we can, be empathetic, and we still need to be held accountable for the things that we do and say. So I think it's really important with all of this to find a balance between the two, kind of just find a happy medium between, hey, listen, I could have done that better, I could have reacted better, XYZ, and I'm a human and I fucked up, and that's okay. Let me just make sure I do better next time. So all of that to say, use your feelings to help you. They're there to help. The whole point of feelings is to kind of guide you and help you understand yourself and the inner workings of your own brain more. So it can be really eye-opening. It can also be really fucking annoying and frustrating sometimes. But ultimately, our brain and our body, the whole point of it is to help us. So let it. It's confusing and weird, but ultimately we are humans and humans are confusing as fuck, but we're also really fucking cool. So remember, you're a bad bitch. You are amazing. All right. Love you. Bye.